Welcome to the Self-Reflections podcast, where real reflections are shared by real people. Today's guest is someone who didn't just uproot her life geographically, but spiritually, emotionally, and professionally. Larissa Behrend left her structured life in Germany in search of something more alignment, more fulfillment, more truth. What she discovered along the way was epigenetics, awakening, and a profound understanding of how we are not our genes, we are the environment that shapes them. Larissa is a certified epigenetic coach, a TEDx speaker, and a guide for those wanting to align their biology with their purpose. She now helps others unlock their unique happiness blueprint. If you've ever questioned whether your life could feel more aligned or wondered how science and spirituality can merge, this episode is for you. Larissa, thank you so much for joining me on an episode.
Thank you so much for having me. And that was such a great introduction. I was like, oh, wow, that's, it really, you summarized everything so well. Thank you for that.
Of course. Larissa, can you tell us about, taking us back to where it all started in Germany? I know that when we discussed in our discovery call, you mentioned that from the outside, everything seemed perfect, but there was something missing. What was actually happening for you at that time?
Yeah, so my story kind of goes back, I think, 3 or 4 years now. And as you said, I grew up in Germany. I had like the best childhood, and I went like through the conventional academic way that is kind of normal for Europe and especially Germany. So you go to school, then you go to university, you do your bachelor's, your master's, and then you get like a 9-to-5 job working for someone. And I did all that because that's just normal. That's just how you're supposed to do it. Like I never really questioned that. And I was happy from the outside, and I wouldn't say I was very unhappy in the inside, but there was always something missing. Like I always felt like this is not the reason why I came here on earth. Like there has to be more for it. Like life has more in store for myself. And I had like, for example, I worked in an international company in a marketing. The job was stable, secure. It was also fun, but it was never like, I never felt like it's really me. And and then kind of I made the decision, the drastic decision to move to Australia because I have been here before just traveling, and I fell in love with the country, the people, the mentality, the no worries attitude, and also the connection to nature that people have here way more than they have in Germany, I would say. And yeah, I just kind of I left my secure 9-to-5 job, which was like a lot of misunderstanding I got. But that was also necessary for myself to really do that step and to kind of trust in myself again, and be sure or be certain of my decision. So that was really good to get this misunderstanding because it kind of just made me stronger. But then also I left my beautiful apartment that I had in like a big friends circle, all these kind of things I kind of left behind to a certain degree and just followed that little intuition inside of me that said, just go for it. Like I had no plan for Australia, not really. I just knew that I probably didn't want to go to another marketing job because, as I said, that never felt like it's really me. But that's basically it. So I came here with basically just one suitcase of belongings left. I sold everything else in Germany and started the new adventure. And then everything kind of, played out very well. And yeah, I think that's what happened in Germany.
Yeah. Larissa, many people, like you've just identified, experience what we as psychologists call the existential dissonance, right? It's this disconnect between our outer life that seems fine and ideal in majority of societal standards, but internally there's something that just feels off, and a tension then starts to actually arise when this disconnect is not then like attuned to or followed or explored. And that then creates such a immediate disconnect between our inner values, our desires, our sense of purpose. And it's not necessarily, because I know you did say that, it's not like you had a horrific experience back in Germany, but so it's not necessarily a depression or anything like that, but well, in the traditional sense of what we know depression to be, but it's more of like this unease in like a psycho-spiritual type of way that something essential is missing. And honestly, moving to another country is so huge. And sometimes when you're young, when you do it, it's one thing. But when you actually have to let go of so many of your connections as an adult, that is next level. So, in saying that, what fears or challenges came up for you that helped you, I guess, make that decision and just kind of overcome the well, what's to come?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. And I think what I really experienced is that I had to face my beliefs, my belief
Mm.
systems about how life should look like at a certain age, for example. Like I was almost 30 back then, and you should have a good job, a career, all these kind of things. So I had to really, yeah, focus on those beliefs and identify them and be like, oh, okay, wait a minute, this is literally just a belief that maybe society put there, or that's maybe just a story that I told myself for years and years and years how life has to look like at that age. But who says that? Who says it actually has to look like it? And I think for me, it was also a topic of being authentic. And I think that kind of aligns with what you just said. I think most people, they live a life where they're not fully and truly authentic to themselves. And I feel like this can lead, in the long run, this can lead to so many problems, like either health problems or mental problems, problems in your relationships, problems in a relationship with yourself, also mainly. When you kind of ignore that little feeling inside or the little voice inside that tells you, this is not really how I want to live my life, or there is more for me. When you ignore that, you're not being authentic. And I feel like that was one of the biggest lessons that I had to learn, or that I got to learn, um, that it is about being authentic. And yeah, of course, there were a lot of challenges. Like I said, I had a lot of misunderstanding from my environment. Luckily, and that's also a big advantage that I'm very grateful for, my core family, like my parents and my siblings, they were always supporting, and they would unconditionally support whatever I would do. So that definitely helped in making those big decisions, because I knew I can always kind of fall back on them if I have to. Um, so I never truly felt completely alone or doing that by myself, which is also, I know that not everyone has that network to fall on for, and I'm very grateful for that. But in the end, like, for example, leaving all my friends behind while everyone was kind of doing life in a different way, they all followed the conventional way. And I was the odd one that kind of said, no, for me, it doesn't feel right. And kind of stepping out of that also was for me a big step. But I think, as I said earlier, it just showed me that I can actually rely on my intuition. I can actually rely on myself, and there's not really much that I personally need in life than having this connection to myself that then helps me in going through life by defining the next step. So I don't have to see the whole way in front of me, how it turns out. Even now with my business and stuff, I don't know if I'm still going to be doing the same thing that I'm doing now in 5, 10, 20 years. But I know for now it's the right thing. And then I'll focus on the next step instead of on the next 20 steps, because maybe the next step will lead to another step that I can't even see right now. So yeah, I think there's always, with every big decision in life, there's always you will always face misunderstanding and challenges and doubt, all these kind of emotions. But I think it's important to stay connected to yourself during that time and follow your intuition and be
And you
authentic.
Yeah, and you actually did. You found your passion in something incredibly fascinating, epigenetics. For those listening who might not know, what exactly is epigenetics and how did it change your worldview?
Yeah, so epigenetics is a science, which is very good because I feel like nowadays spirituality and alternative medicine and alternative treatments, they're coming more and more. They're becoming more and more popular again, which is great. But I feel like science is still for most people the door opener to kind of opening your mind to alternatives. Um, and epigenetics basically tells us how our environment, and I mean our inner environment, but also the outer environment, influences our genes' activity. So, for example, we got told for years and years and years, even in school, that the genes that we inherit from our parents, they're set in stone. Like there's nothing we can do about it. And for example, if a certain disease runs in our family, it is most likely that we will get it too because it is in our genes. At least this is how we got taught. But epigenetics has found that that's just simply not true. So, of course, we get our genes from our parents, but the way how they express themselves, which means the way how they turn off or turn on, is not really defined. Like it's not set in stone. We can influence that. And the thing is that epigenetics has found that there are certain molecular mechanisms that are sitting on top of our DNA. That's where the name comes from, because epi in Latin means on top or above. So on top of our genetics, there is something. And these are like, as I said, those molecular mechanisms. And we can actually influence how those mechanisms work. So, for example, there's one which is called the DNA methylation. And if this mechanism actually sits on top of our DNA, then it turns off a certain gene. And sometimes we want certain genes to be turned off, like, for example, tumor genes or whatever. We want them to stay turned
Of
off.
course. Yes.
So yeah, and it's basically, it shows us how we can regulate our genetic activity and that we have actually the power to do so, which I think is incredible. And it also opens so much possibility and chances for our own health, but not only for our own health, but also the one of generations to come. But yeah, that's another kind of topic. But yeah, it's fascinating.
Oh, that is absolutely fascinating. And building on that, what I find truly powerful is how this science validates the impact of everyday choices. From the food we eat to the thoughts we repeat, it shows us that our genetic destiny is not fixed but fluid. And this perspective aligns with, biopsychosocial model of health, which acknowledges that biological, psychological, and social factors all play a huge role in our well-being. I think, when we look at it in practice, this means things like trauma, chronic stress, or even lack of emotional connection can affect gene expression not just as much as toxins or nutrition, which is a huge empowering message to our community that healing isn't just about treating the symptoms. It's actually about creating this environment, both internal and external, that supports your system to thrive. And to have not only the knowledge that that is possible, it actually is so empowering for individuals to know that the way that they actually feel or navigate the world can actually be within their grasp.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. That's what I love about it because, as you said, it gives us back this power over our health. And it's something that it's very much needed nowadays, in my opinion, because we're kind of coming from a society where everyone's just looking for the quick fix. Like everyone's just wants to go, like the symptoms go away or whatever. But I think it's time to kind of change our perspective or even our perception of what disease, for example, actually means. So disease isn't something that just like turns up overnight. Like yesterday I was healthy, today I'm sick. That's not how it works. Even if we kind of got taught that you're just unlucky. You're just unlucky to have this disease coming up now. It's completely like there's nothing you can do about it. Same with our genes. But if we change our perception to that, and if we start to look at disease, for example, as a dis-ease in the body, which means a disbalance or an imbalance, it opens up the possibility for us to see that it started probably years and years and years ago. And I feel like a good analogy is one that I use with my clients, where I always talk about our body and mind to be like a rain barrel. And if you imagine over time, the rain fills up the barrel. And at one point, if a lot of rain has been going into the barrel without us consciously emptying that barrel, it overflows. And this is the point where symptoms show in our body. But it actually started years and years ago when like the barrel slowly started to get filled. And our job is actually to empty that barrel on a regular basis through, for example, detoxing. Like detox is something that should be part of our life, of our routine, monthly, if not weekly, because unfortunately we do live in a world where we're exposed to, I think it's 77,000 toxins. Like it's unbelievable. And I'm not even saying you probably can't avoid toxins at all nowadays. Like even if you live somewhere in the country and even if you grow your own food and all these kind of things, yes, you minimize it to a big amount, but there's still like, I don't know, toxins in the air or toxins coming from our skies, all these kind of things. So you cannot fully avoid it, but what you do, what you can do is detox on a regular level, and therefore you empty your rain barrel and you make sure that it never comes to the point where it actually overflows. And yeah, epigenetics just gives us the scientific insight of how everything in a body is connected. So it's not just our genes, it's like they interact with our whole inner environment. They interact, as you already said, with our thoughts and our beliefs. Because if you, for example, break down a thought, if you break it down of what a thought really is, and if you would look at it from a scientific way, it's nothing more than an electric signal. And for example, an emotion is nothing more than a chemical structure. So for example, love has a different chemical structure than fear, for example. And those chemical structures form the environment of our cells, or form the environment where our cells live in, and therefore where our genes are located. And if we understand that, it has such a big impact on our health, on our well-being, and on our life.
Thank you. And before we get into some ways our listeners can begin to kind of implement some of the suggestions, what drew you to epigenetics specifically? Was there a moment that sparked your curiosity?
So it literally started when I arrived here in Australia 3 years ago. As I mentioned earlier, I didn't really have a plan of what to do. And I just took some time off, like kind of clearing the mind and kind of getting away from all the societal expectations that I experienced in Germany, but also all the expectations that I have had put on myself. Like I said before, like you have to be this or that by the age of 30, and you have to have a career, all these kind of things. So I kind of just took some time off mentally and physically. And I just purely followed my interests, which is I love reading. And I also found a great streaming portal, which is called Gaia. I don't know if you've heard of it, but I always say it's spiritual.
I have a
Netflix.
subscription.
Amazing. And I really dove into it, and I just like watched these series about the mind and body connection, about ancient civilizations, like fully like just whatever I felt like and whatever I thought was interesting. And this is how I found epigenetics, because there's Bruce Lipton, for example, a STEM biologist, and he's kind of the expert in epigenetics. And I always say he's my little science crush, even if he's like 80 or so. But like the work he did is just so
phenomenal.
Yes, exactly, that's the word. And I thought like, oh my God, this sounds amazing. I want to learn more. And then I took another step on the journey, and I read into epigenetics. I read Bruce Lipton's book, and I was still very intrigued and still very interested. And I thought, I want to do this as like as a job. Like I want to help people to really understand what it is and how they can change their life like that. And then I actually did a certification as an epigenetics coach with a amazing institute in Germany. So they're based in Germany, which is definitely, it was an advantage because everything was so structured and in depth and very professional. And I think I needed that in order to really understand the topic and the material and everything. So I did this. It went for 6 months. And then I also had like an exam and all these kind of things. So it's a proper certification. And yeah, then I kind of just decided, why not try and be an epigenetic coach here in Australia. And yeah, that's when I kind of started my coaching business. And then another step on that journey was that I saw that there's a local TEDx event coming. And I never thought I would love to be on a stage or public speaking, because I was always like a little bit, I wouldn't say timid, but not as confident that I would have imagined myself being on a stage. But somehow I heard that little voice in my head again saying, just apply for it. You have nothing to lose. That's what I did. And in the end, I actually ended up on the TEDx stage, which was one of the best experiences of my life. It was so empowering, and it showed me that this is what I actually also want to do. Speaking or publicly speaking about a very important topic. So yeah, it kind of, I think by following my interests and just listening to my intuition while doing that, I found epigenetics. Yeah, and it has been
Thank
amazing.
you. Oh, it sounds like it, because when we find something that speaks deeply to our purpose and our values, it creates a completely different way that we show up. We step into the work that we do. It's no longer, just a job, or no longer something that we are forced to do for the sake of money. You actually have a passion for that,
Yeah.
and a love for it, and a curiosity around it. And when you compare that with something that you then, do for work, you've pretty much hit the nail on the head of what everyone aspires to have in their life.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And it comes down to what I said in the beginning. It's all about authenticity. How
Yeah.
authentic you are to yourself, and then how authentic you show up in life. And if you follow your interest, you are authentic to your interest, to what you want in life. And yeah, I feel like that actually goes hand in hand. And that's also, for example, the coaching that I offer. I developed a method by myself, the so-called heart method. And one of those points or topics that we address is the authenticity of people. And like, how authentic are they really living their life? Because I think it has such a big impact on basically everything, as I said, on our health, on our mental constitution, on our relationships. So that's really something I learned within the last few years, and also through epigenetics, because if we're authentic, if we're living an authentic life, then the whole environment that we're in is a positive one, and one that is beneficial for our genetic expression.
Thank you. Larissa, you often talk about regulating gene function. Can you share a simple way listeners might begin to do this in their own lives?
Of course. There are actually a few simple ways. What I always start off with, as I said already with the rain barrel, I would always start off with a detox, because still most of us are not really in the habit, including myself. I also need to remind myself regularly to do a detox. And I feel like only once our rain barrel is empty, then we can really start to lay a different foundation.
Mm.
So
Can you give an explanation of what a detox means for our community?
Of course, a detox is giving your body basically a reset. So a detox can look like, for example, you're detoxing your liver, because the liver is one of the most important organs in our body, and it filters basically all the nasty stuff out of our food, or what we drink, and what we eat, all these kind of things. And by detoxing the body, as I said, we're doing a reset in order to then change a few fundamental things. And you can do it through, for example, nowadays in the health stores or organic shops, they have already like pre-mixed powders, for example. But one thing I always recommend is, for example, zeolite, which really helps the body to do its detox thing very good. But then there are also certain herbs, and also you kind of need to, during the detox, you need to support your body with certain vitamins and minerals so that it still gets the things that it needs in order to function properly. But yeah, so that's definitely one thing to detox. And then also another thing that I always recommend is, and it sounds so simple and it sounds so like a trend, but it is meditation. So because meditation has been shown to massively impact our genetic activity, and it's actually also, it contributes not only to our mental and physical well-being, it also contributes to our longevity. So there's, for example, a study that shows where meditation extends the telomeres, which are little things at the end of our DNA, and in order, like, just helps to live longer, basically. That's the easiest way to describe it.
Describe it.
And I always say to people, because a lot of people would say to me, yeah, I know meditation, I know it's good for me, but I just can't do it. Like, I can't sit down and shut off my mind. It's not possible. I tried it, but it's not for me. And I get that. I understand that. But the good thing is that meditation doesn't always have to look like this. It can also be, for example, when you take a walk with your dog outside, you focus on 5 things around you, for example. Or one of my favorite meditations is during having a shower. You focus on your 5 senses. So what do I smell? How does the water touching my skin feel like? What do I hear? Like, it's, in the end, meditation is about anchoring yourself back into the present moment. And it can also be through dancing, for example. A lot of people love to dance. And while you dance, you're also in a present moment. So if you don't want to sit down like a yogi or whatever, if this is not your style, then that's totally fair. But I think it is very important also to give our mind a little break, to kind of try to be more in the present. And there are so many ways and styles of how you can achieve that. So yeah, meditation is one. Then obviously your diet plays a massive role when it comes to gene regulation, because there are so many things that can turn on or off our genes. And it's kind of hard to say there's this one diet that you have to follow, because in the end we're all individuals, unique, and what works for me doesn't work for you, and the other way around. So I would never say this is the number one diet that everyone has to follow. But there are just like some guidelines, like, for example, try to have organic food, or at least once a week, or try to have good quality meat where no hormones are added, all these kind of things. But then also, for example, try to have 70% of your diet to be plant-based. add in high quality protein, add in high quality fats like avocado, olive oil, certain nuts. So these are like the guidelines, but in the end, that's what I do with my clients. I kind of look at their unique body, their unique conditions, their history, and then we kind of create a individual meal guide, I want to call it. But nutrition is definitely a very big influence on our genes. And then maybe one more that's very easy to follow and also has an immense impact is gratitude. And that sounds also so it sounds almost too easy, but there's so many studies that have shown that gratitude, like having the feeling of being grateful, actually interacts with our genes in a very positive way, and it helps to regulate our genes in a healthy way. And I think that's amazing, because that is something, even if you're super busy, you can still kind of get into the habit of writing down, or even like saying in your head 3 things you're grateful for each day, for example. Or even you can ask yourself, what made me smile today, or what was the highlight of my day, like all these kind of little things. And that's also, by the way, perfect to implement when you have a family. For example, when you have kids, you can just like sit at the dinner table and ask everyone what was the highlight of the day. And by doing so, you not only train your mind to get in that more positive and resilient state, but also you activate that feeling of gratitude inside of you, and therefore you create an environment that's very beneficial for your genes.
And Larissa, thank you so much for sharing so many wonderful ways that our listeners can actually already review what they're doing and make little changes. But what I guess I want to highlight, and to our community as well, is nothing Larissa said was outlandish. They're very simple, basic things that sometimes when we are told to do these things in our everyday life, we all know that these are all things that are good for us. But when we then actually have the true understanding of the genuine and in-depth impact that it has, like these things impact your genes, impact how you naturally then will feel on the inside, and what disease gets created and what disease doesn't. So I think, while we want to, because in all of my podcasts, we very much highlight the benefits of grounding or meditation, yes, or, being conscious with what we put on or in our bodies. But I think this episode really highlights the genuine scientific reason of why these things are pivotal to wellness for every individual.
Yes, I agree. You summed it up perfectly, because as I said earlier also, you have the power over your well-being in your own hands, and it doesn't have to be like super expensive. It doesn't have to be super much effort that you need to do in order to stay healthy. It is those little things. But then, of course, I also know myself, sometimes life can get so busy and you feel overwhelmed by like the smallest things and stuff. I totally get that. But therefore, I think it's always a good reminder, as you just said, to keep in mind how much impact those little things already have on our well-being. And that's why I always say knowledge is power, because once you know, you really have the power to change things, even on a smaller scale. And that's definitely one thing that I love about epigenetics, that with like those small kind of changes, you can already impact so much. And yeah, so you really summed it up perfectly. Thank you for that.
Larissa, I know you mentioned a lot of the lifestyle, I guess, things that impact our biology, but I really want to move and shift into how our mindset and our emotional health impact biology, because as a psychologist, While I very much try and help people with lifestyle changes, I look at the inner world in what's actually happening in their mind, in their emotional experience, how their body holds trauma and things like that. Because being a, trauma psychologist, that's where majority of my work is. But I really love to get your perspective on, how does mindset and emotional health impact our biology on a deep level?
Yeah, it impacted big times. So that's where, in my work, for example, the field of transgenerational epigenetics comes into play. Because, as I said earlier, if you break down thoughts and emotions, it's nothing more than an electric signal and a chemical complex. And in order to really understand what it does to our biology, first of all, what I just remembered, there's an amazing book of Bruce Lipton, my science crush. Again, it's called The Biology of Belief, and he really explains what's going on in the brain, in the body, when we have certain beliefs about the world, about ourselves, about relationships, about monies, all these kind of limiting beliefs that are actually limiting the way of how we live life. And going back to transgenerational epigenetics, it is important to not only obviously identify the beliefs you have in your life right now, but then also asking where those beliefs really come from. Because in most cases, for example, our core fear that we have is not even ours, but it got passed down from generations and generations before us. And that's actually a big part of my work, to kind of dive into the field of transgenerational epigenetics and really do a little bit of detective work, you could almost say, in order to identify what's holding you back in your life right now, which beliefs are standing in your way to live a fully healthy and happy life. For example, something like, oh, I'm lazy and that's why I don't have any energy, or just basic stuff like this. Or even with money, there are so many beliefs around money, and just by identifying those, the first step is already done. And then we look into your family history, and we kind of see where you find certain parallels, because that's also the beauty of epigenetics, that it has found that a lot of the things, like a lot of the emotions and the experiences that our grandparents, let's say, had, got passed down epigenetically to us. So for example, a lot of people, they feel lonely without actually having a proper reason in their life right now. So they have a great family, they have a great friend circle and all of that, but they still feel lonely. And then what we discover is that in most cases, it goes back to an experience that their grandparents had, because they felt lonely during, for example, the war, or whatever they went through. And I think that's definitely a very important topic and factor to take into consideration when it comes to our biology, because in the end it affects our biology. The fears that we have, they create a different environment for our genes than, for example, positive feelings we have. But then also it helps us to change our perception on certain things. And in the end, this is basically what it's all about. And because changing perception means basically changing our biology. Because I always say, for example, if you go to work in a car and then there's traffic, and you have two scenarios of how to react in this situation. Scenario A would be you're super stressed because in your mind you're thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be late. My boss is going to have a go at me. That means I have to stay longer. And also that guy next to me, why is he looking at me like this? I'm already stressed enough. Like, this is one scenario. And what happens is that you create in your body an environment that is full of cortisol, of stress, of negative feelings, of anger, frustration, all these things that are not really beneficial to your biology, to your gene regulation. Or you have then the other option, scenario B, would be you're still in that car, you're still stuck in traffic, but you change your perception and you change it to, for example, using the time and listening to your favorite podcast, or using the time and giving your mom a call, or just like listening to your favorite song, and kind of realizing that there's nothing you can do right now in this moment about the external situation. Like you're going to be stuck in that car anyways, but the way of how you experience that situation, and then the way of how your biology is affected by that, is in your hands. Like that decision is in your hands. And I feel like that if you go through life with that mindset of always having the choice of how we want to see or react, of how we want to react to certain circumstances that life throws at us, then we will always have the power to to create a life that is beneficial for us, to create a biology that is beneficial for us. And I think that's actually one of the greatest gifts humans have, because, for example, animals, they're most driven by their instincts and stuff, and most of them don't have like the cognitive ability than we have. But since we do have that ability of consciously, for example, consciously stopping a negative thought circle, or consciously quieten down the so-called monkey mind, which is like a monkey jumping from tree to tree and kind of creating chaos in our head. We can then choose to create a different perception, and therefore literally create a different life, because the life will be happy, more at ease, at balance, more resilient through stressful periods. Because if we're honest, there's always going to be ups and downs in our lives. But it is about how we go through that downs, for example, how we come back from those downs. And yeah, I hope that answers.
Larissa, oh, absolutely. And there's so many things were popping into my head. I think that the most prominent was just being able to take a step back, even in the work that I do with my clients, and realizing, and for the longest time, I have not been working with symptom reduction. It's not the way that I work. It's, all great for certain clinicians to work with reducing symptoms, but I very much try and work with the core and very trauma informed, and focusing on how things came about, building insight and education, and making significant changes from the inside out. And what I'm taking even from that is even the smallest of changes that happen in my therapeutic practice with my clients. Not only is that really heartwarming for me to help clients get to places which they've never been to before, or heal from wounds that have been open for the longest time. I think what I'm getting from this discussion also is that I'm not just helping with behavior change, or I'm not just helping with changing of mindset. It's a deep biological gene change, which I've never actually, like, I know of epigenetics because I've followed Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, and watch so many things on Gaia as well. But I think even just as we're talking about it, you actually grasp the amazing work that can be done through the practices, whether it be through counseling or psychology, or but ones that go so much deeper than just symptom reduction. You're actually helping people change internal narratives, wipe out societal beliefs that they're stuck in, or even generational beliefs that they're stuck in, and heal from things, not just from a emotional or psychological perspective, but you're actually helping them switch their genes on and off. Like, that just blows my mind. And I can appreciate that, whether or not we know of epigenetics, it's still, I can't describe the feeling. I just feel so honored to be able to actually do the work. And you've just reminded me how deep the impact can actually go.
Yeah, 100%, I agree. And that's what I said earlier. in the end, epigenetics shows you the connection between, like that everything is interconnected. And what you just said, it's not just the work that you do, it's not just like the emotional healing and the mental healing. It is also the physical healing, because everything is interconnected. And that's what I love about the kind of work that we both do, because it all kind of goes hand in hand together. So we're basically doing the same work, just from different approaches. Like we have different approaches, we have different methods and all these kind of things. But basically what it does in the end is the same outcome, which is helping people to heal and to reconnect to themselves, to their innerst essence and their innerst being. And I think it's just amazing that you can have so many angles to look at this. But yeah, I'm glad that it kind of, that you have this feeling now that you can literally help people on the physical level too, on top of everything that you already do. So that's great. Yeah.
Larissa, you teach people about happiness blueprints. What does that mean, and how can someone begin to uncover theirs?
Yeah, so the happiness blueprint is something that I came up with mainly for, it started with a online course that I created, where people can literally start to create their own blueprint to happiness. And that includes the method, the heart method. So it looks at their health, what they can do in order to just feel more healthy. Because I feel like in order to be fully happy at the end, you need to have a certain level of health, because you can't be happy without being healthy. So that's why health is really a big kind of inclusion into, like, in the happiness blueprint, because you need to have a look at your mental and physical health. Then we also address the epigenetics, the transgenerational part, what's standing in your way in order to create the life you always dreamed of, and in order to be really truly happy. And then, as I said before, authenticity is a big point that we always look at. Rest and reset. So how much rest do we give our body and minds, and how can we achieve more rest? Because this is also such an essential part of being healthy, but also being happy. Because if you don't rest on a regular basis, and if you don't do it consciously, then at one point you will always feel a little bit unhappy, because you don't give your body and mind the break it needs in order to function properly. And then also I give people a lot of tools that they can use then and implement into their everyday life in order to create that happiness blueprint. And the blueprint looks different for everyone else. So there's no two same blueprints. But through my coaching, or even the online courses that I offer, people can literally go step by step and learn about how they literally can create their best life, their happiest life. Yeah.
This is really powerful, because what you're actually describing is the unlearning, right? So often we're chasing happiness through external metrics like the job, a relationship, maybe the next goal. But in reality, as we've highlighted in this episode, the shift actually happens in the inner world. And it's the moment that, we need to pause and ask, who am I beneath all of this pressure, the productivity, the roles that I've been playing? And for so many people, that's the beginning to coming home to themselves, which so many people fail to give themselves the space to get to.
Yes, I agree 100%. And what I experience myself is the awakening part plays a big role in that too. And I feel like, especially within the last 5 years, there has been a global awakening going on.
Yes.
More and more people start to wake up to the reality we live in, and what that means for ourselves, for our own life. But then also by really learning about, for example, how our current world works, and which powers are actually kind of pulling the strings, and then like if you go through the whole big pharma and who owns the media, all these kind of things, if you learn about that, you automatically also learn about alternatives, which is how healthy living looks like and a healthy mindset, and why, for example, we see so many people struggling nowadays with mental health. Like, it's all related to the world we live in. But then obviously, like, this is the external environment that I was speaking about, but then obviously also there's a lot of stuff you can do to kind of balance your inner environment. And I think the awakening goes hand in hand with that. And it gives you just a chance to really kind of reconnect to what's really important and how you can create a life where you decide. Oh, yeah, that's basically.
And I want to add to that, a lot of what we believe to be our identity is actually layers of conditioning from family, culture, society, and even trauma. We mistake roles, expectations, and survival strategies for who we truly are.
Yeah.
And an awakening, just like, your own or my own, Larissa, often actually begins with the dissonance between the life we've built or the narratives that we've created from our external environment and the life that aligns with our truth. And when we look at this, it's kind of this breaking from the conditioned self to our true, and you've used the word authentic self, like this individualization, the path of becoming, who we are beneath all of these layers.
Yeah.
And I know a quote, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will completely direct your life and you will call it fate. And I think Carl Jung said that. But when we actually start to question the program that we've lived up until this point, we actually create this space between who we thought to have been and who we actually truly are at the depths of our soul. And that space is where transformation begins. And of course, it's going to be uncomfortable because ego absolutely resists change, especially when that change threatens its safety and the narrative that it's held onto to have this false sense of safety. But as we know, and as I've said this to my clients and on the podcast, discomfort is often a sign of where you're actually growing closer to truth, and a version of yourself that is more aligned with your true self, not further from it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think especially when it comes to discomfort, it all comes down again to your perception, like how you perceive that discomfort. Is it something that you think is scary and you don't really want to feel it? You rather want to like do life how you're used to do it? Or do you see discomfort, as you said, as something where there's an indicator that you're actually growing, and that after the discomfort, there's something even better? So it's actually something to maybe be excited about at one point, because after that discomfort, it gets better and better and better. So that's what I meant by saying that we really have the power in our own hand of how we want to go through life, with which kind of mindset and with which kind of perception, how we want to perceive the challenges and the discomfort that's part of life. And also what I just wanted to add, because you said the programming that's going on, it's literally a programming, because I'm sure you're aware that like our subconsciousness, you could kind of compare the subconsciousness to like a computer program. And
Fully.
until the age of 7, this program kind of gets created. So everything you hear and see from your parents, for example, from people in your close environment, stays stuck or gets stuck on that program. And then a lot of people, they still live their life run by that program, which is basically the one that you got when you were 7. So I feel like there's just so much to uncover. And I also think it's a never-ending journey. So even if, for example, I myself have grown so much within the last 3 years, but I'm sure there will be enough for the next 40 years to uncover still. Because
Absolutely.
yeah, in the end, it's always a ongoing process, and it's all about kind of going with the waves of life up and down and being resilient and staying true to yourself. Yeah.
Mm. Absolutely. Larissa, I know we've mentioned a few things already, whether they are resources or books or people we kind of look up to in this space. There's so much out there I do appreciate, but I want to help our community to be able to pull into how they can regulate, align, and awaken themselves. For someone listening or watching who feels a little bit out of alignment and a little bit stuck, what's some of the first steps that they can take to begin regulating their life and biology that we haven't already discussed?
Yeah. So one thing would be, for example, go and get yourself the streaming portal Gaia, because there's so much stuff on it that helps you to get like a first impression of the topics and the body mind connection, body mind and spirit connection of scientific topics also. Like there's just so much on it, and I feel like that's a really good first step, because you could just, instead of watching Netflix tonight, you could just watch Gaia, and it's still relaxing, but on the other hand, you also learn something, and maybe you discover something. So that's something. And then obviously there's so many books. Like I said, Bruce Lipton, everything he has is a great start to jump into epigenetics, for example. Podcasts nowadays, I feel like you can learn so much from podcasts. And also, I don't want to really advertise myself here, but I created exactly for this purpose an online course where, because I felt like I had exactly this problem where I was like, okay, where do I start? There's just so much, and where do I start? So that I created that one online course where you get, in the first part, you get like an overview. You get basically the awakening. So it gives you an overview of not only how our world works, but mainly also how our body works, how it's connected with the mind, what role our perception plays, and what actually happens in the brain when you change your perception. So it goes really deep on that level from a scientific point of view. It also, for example, talks about quantum physics and how this is now the most important science out there.
Yep.
So all kind of these things that you really need to know in order to then take the next step, which is in my course, for example, part 2, where I give you tools and resources and exercises that you can really do yourself, even if you're busy, to then kind of reconnect to yourself and go from there, and then just go your own way. Like it doesn't have to be epigenetics or something, but just like to kind of, yeah, reconnect to yourself. So that's why I created that course, because I feel like there's not much out there that really combines that much of a knowledge. Like it's basically everything I learned within the last 3 years combined in that one course. And yeah, so if you want to have a look, you can find it on my website. Just check it out if it's something for you. If not, that's totally fine too. But as I said, my intention was to really give you something where you can start and then go from there.
And I think when when we have an awakening, some people have like slow trickles. For me, it was during COVID. It was a massive, massive slap in the face and the biggest spiral into the deepest hole of, rabbit hole of everything. So we obviously, you're going to experience your own awakening in your own time, and just stay curious and give yourself the space to see what comes up and see what resonates with you, because we rarely spend time. And my husband sent me this reel recently where the majority, if not all, of our solutions to our problems, even our own inner ones, will actually come to the surface if we give ourselves half an hour of silence. with no distractions and just be able to see what is actually there, because we've already got all the answers. And if we don't, the questions will start coming to the surface, which will then guide you on a path of self-discovery. And when we, so many of us have spent years and years and years, even decades, not listening. We've completely overridden the signals of pain and exhaustion and even joy, because survival, it taught us to just completely disconnect.
Yeah.
So it makes beautiful sense from what you've mentioned that when people first start exploring their healing journey or their awakening journey, it can sometimes feel overwhelming, and we want to, simplify the process in a really gentle and contained way. So thank you so much for sharing your course, because I would actually have loved to have something of structure to follow, but it felt like at that time, like I got kicked in, and it was just thankfully I had my husband in and around the awakening at the same time, but it happened so quickly and it was so intense that it would have been nice to have a gentle and slow experience of it. So yes, I'll definitely be putting in the description below all the details to all the resources, and of course that your course on your website for our community.
Thank you. Thanks. I appreciate it. And what I just want to add there, because the awakening part, it will most likely feel, like you said, like a slap in the face, because you will face cognitive dissonance, which is like
fully
all your beliefs that you thought the world is like this and that will fall apart. And everything you thought to be true will actually, you will kind of see like, okay, they're not true. And that's hard. But and that's why I kind of, or what I really wanted to make sure in my course is that people are not getting the knowledge and awakening, but also the solutions of how they then, with all the knowledge and stuff, of how they then can kind of find a way of how to deal with it, how to move on with it, how to stay grounded, how to stay true to yourself. So that's what was really important, because I feel like even if you do get some knowledge from people, they just leave you with it, and then you're like, oh my god, now I'm in that space and what am I going to do about it? But that was really important to me, to have solutions right there at hand. You just have to follow them, you just have to, or look into them if there's something for you or not, but it is all there. You just have to, as you said, you have that structure, you just have to have a look and then be guided. And that's why, as you said, I also wished I would have had something like this when I started. And that was the main intention, to create exactly that for people. Yeah.
Thank you. Larissa, what does living in alignment mean to you now?
Living in alignment means for me waking up without the feeling of, oh shit, it's Monday. But having the feeling of, yes, it's Monday. Today I get to do another day of what I love. It means being fully aligned with your spirit, mind, and body. So every decision you make feels right. It feels like your intuition is tuned on or tuned in. And it feels like radiating love and being connected to yourself and to people around you. Yeah, I guess that's what living in alignment means for me.
Oh, that warms my heart, because even as you're saying that, there are very significant pockets of my life, and don't get me wrong, it's taken years to develop this and stick to it, but that I can sense that. And as you were saying it, like my face and my whole body started to light up, because it's a beautiful reminder of what alignment actually means and how it can actually then show up in your life. So thank you so much for sharing that, Larissa.
No, thank you. It has been a great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
And of course, is there any other last messages that you would like our community to know before we wrap up our episode today?
So straight out of my mind, I would say that kind of knowing or kind of being prepared for what's to come within the next few years, because the next few years I don't think it's going to be easier globally. I think there will be a lot of chaos, but I also think the chaos is necessary for all structures and all systems to fall apart, and so that something new can emerge. But still, it will be a lot of chaos, a lot of pain probably, so a lot of negativity also. But I think the way to go through that is to really reconnect to yourself, to your truest essence, to maybe some kind of greater power that you kind of know you can rely on, that you know you're being guided, and really kind of have this in mind that A, everything happens for a reason, and B, it's still in your hands. Like, you still have, as I said, you get to choose how you see the world and how your world looks like. And I think especially within the next few years, it's going to be important to always remind yourself of that. Always stay connected, stay grounded, find peace in nature, all these kind of things, and really try to find something where you can serve in a positive way for the world and everything that's to come.
And to add to that, if you are feeling alone or stuck or not knowing how to navigate the chaos, because like even now, clients and friends and colleagues are reporting how stressful things out there are. Connect, link in,
Yes.
Go to your community groups, go to your coaches, your therapists, your psychologists, whoever you feel connected to and called to. Go to them. You don't have to navigate this world, this chaos, and also your internal struggles on your own. So definitely know that support is out there if things do get too overwhelming.
Yes, 100%. I would agree.
Larissa, thank you so much for being here and for reminding us that we are not powerless in our healing journey. Your journey shows us that we can be both scientific and spiritual, logical and intuitive, and that our purpose often lives right underneath our pain.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Thank you.
And to our community, thank you as always for tuning in. If this episode resonated, please share it with someone who might need it. And as always, like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. We love hearing from you. Until next time, take care and keep reflecting.